huge and tremendous thanks to Church and State, one of Salt Lake's newest startup collaborative co-working spaces. It's obviously a gorgeous space. They've done a great job on the build out, and it's here to service the entrepreneur community in Salt Lake, which we are as well. So congratulations to getting this up and going, and thank you very much, Garrett. If you want to speak to Garrett about getting your organization involved, please reach out to him. He's right there. Secondly, I'd like to thank Beehive Startups and UVEF, who are very involved in helping to put the CD's event together. Their networks are tremendous, and they helped Healthbox, who's obviously coming to Salt Lake and trying to build a presence and brand awareness about what we're doing here. They're very involved in helping us cast the net big and bring all of here. So thank you very much to them as well. All right, so I think we'll just dive right into this. I think everyone read the invitation. We're going to be talking tonight about challenges in healthcare for startups and having some unique stories about how to overcome those. I have a panel here of experts in the healthcare field, from people running their own startups to advisors, strategists, and investors. Matt Gary with Orca Health, Jared Iverson with Health Fund, Corey Kerrigan with Equation, and Nick Anderson, who is kind of an advisor to many companies in the healthcare market, and has a tremendous expertise in the reimbursement and payer strategy kind of sector. So what I'll do is I'll let each one of them make a quick introduction to their company, and then we'll kind of just come back down the line and let one of them kind of talk to the topic at hand. So Nick, you take the first step?
Yeah. I don't even know.
That's all right.
So I'm Nick Anderson. My day job, my full-time job, I work for Intermountain Healthcare at Select Health. And then I also am an advisor to Health Funder and do a whole bunch of startup companies. And after about 6 months of doing what I do for a living with Select Health, I started to notice just how many technologies we deny coverage for, and all that rightfully deny coverage for. And multinational companies all the way down to little startups. And I went to Intermountain and said, do you mind if I do consulting? And they said, yes, I am this conflict of interest disclosure. And for about 5 years now, I've been working with startup companies, helping them figure out health economics and reimbursement type issues, and so that when their product comes across my desk or a similar person's desk at Aetna or Cigna or anywhere, that it doesn't end up in the trash heap. Despite the fact you've raised $80 million in capital and you have an incredible board of directors and management team, it doesn't matter if the strategy was wrong, reimbursement and health economics. So that my day job is the payer, and my afternoon and evening job is a consultant and strategist.
So Corey Kerrigan, Equation. In fact, 2006 we were called Equation Consulting, and as we've come on the tech scene this last couple of years, we decided to rebrand and drop that consulting term kind of as a sub-line of what we're doing. We're trying to become one of the rare companies that goes from professional service to Georgia Tech product revenue. And all the VC that we talk to tend to say that's impossible and rarely ever happens. And they say that the trigger, the percent you have to overcome is kind of that 40-60. And we overcome that last year. We're now 60-40, 60 product, 40 consulting. And so we've made it through that phase where everyone said you can't do it. And if you want to talk to somebody that knows extremely a lot about consulting and healthcare, particularly on the financial side, but has seen a company try to straddle the fence and become a product company when everyone says you can't do it, that's kind of who we are. We're on the Layton, so we're trying to do it on the north end of Silicon Slopes. We're recruiting some great people and having a good time, so interested to see what we can talk about tonight.
Hi, I'm Jared Iverson. I'm the founder of Health Funder. Health Funder is an online investment platform that connects accredited investors with great health startups. There's some great health startups here that are capital raising that we can help you out. From the company's perspective, we help companies not only connect with investors, but connect with expertise through our platform. We've aggregated so far around 450 industry experts. Excuse me, really leading thought leaders, successful serial entrepreneurs. We got the founder of Microsoft's Health Platform, advisor John Nasson, Google Health's advisory board. And we're trying to aggregate all of these experts to help us better source deals, present to company or to investors, and to then help us kind of screen through and vet the deals that we then present to our online network of accredited investors. We're unique in that our model is that we present companies that have a strong offline reputable lead investor. So we partnered with Life Science Angels in Palo Alto, and Salt Lake City Life Science Angels, and several other angel groups and early stage VCs across the U.S. and get quality deal flow from there, and then present those companies after they've been looked at by kind of our group of experts and present them to accredited investors. So we're a young company, growing quickly. Our investor network grew 35% this last quarter. So hopefully we can have some insight as to what companies get interest from accredited investors, and things we've learned, and things that deter investors from wanting to invest in health startups.
My name is Matt Perry. I'm with Orca Health. I started Orca Health about 3 years ago, and we build 3D animations and 3D models to help patients and providers communicate better at the point of care and after the point of care, and the continuation of care. Located in Sandy, we have 26 people. We're adding to that this year significantly. We work with large groups, down to single providers, Harvard Medical School, and some others.
Cool. Maybe Matt, since you're the last speaker, I'm interested just to hear maybe the challenge your company overcame that really put you on the path to success. You know, even when it's going out to selling to providers, how do you sell that first provider system to get the pilot, show success, and then really sell that moving forward?
We were started accidentally. My dad's a spine surgeon down at Tosh here in the Valley, and he wanted some sort of better communication tool based around mobile. He was still handing out pamphlets that were copyrighted in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. And he had no way to communicate with his patients in an effective way. They were going to Dr. Google, or they were going to other places outside the network. And so I built him an app called Spine Decide, and we just took his best practices and created an app, put it in the App Store, and we had about 10,000 downloads within the first week. Started getting emails from physicians and other providers in South Africa, in Germany, Pennsylvania, all over, asking if we were going to do this for shoulder, if we were going to do this for knee, and so we just kind of replicated the model. And so the App Store dynamic was very easy for us. That was a little bit of a different time and place a couple years ago. And we started with a freemium model, and now we moved to a paid model, and that's been very, very successful, mainly because we got so many of those providers initially on board using the product, getting feedback on that product. Really nice emails, really rude emails, helped us build a very good product. So we just kind of scaled from there, and that's kind of how we overcame a lot of the initial challenges, which is going through the App Store dynamic that we just did.
Yeah, you got one.
Sure. So we're really a fintech company, and so I could speak to the challenges that Health Funder itself has overcome, but maybe it's more worthwhile to kind of touch on all the many health startups that have come through our online platform and seeing what has been challenging for them. I think health generally, I'm preaching to the choir here in the church, health startups are much more complex than most consumer tech type startups. For example, if you think of a Silicon Valley type company, or ones that make the media for their billion-dollar valuations, most people can wrap their brain around what the company does, what the value proposition is. Not always the case for health startups. It's oftentimes they're less sexy than the Silicon Valley type companies, and so one thing that we've seen through our platform is we've helped a lot of companies change their messaging and tighten up their messaging. And that is one that I can relate to as a startup founder myself, is how do we better present, and this is, I'm speaking from a fundraising perspective, how do we better present our company to convey our vision to the prospective investors accurately and not confuse them. Most people, if you, I've pitched many times, I've seen many entrepreneurs pitch, I'd say more often than not, investors, and I'm sure there are a lot of investors in the room probably not in agreement, they halfway through the pitch, if there's any point in that pitch that they are confused or disinterested, it's easy to pick up your phone and start looking at your email and you've lost them. And so health startups are particularly difficult in that space because you're not always speaking to a group of people who understand readily what you're doing. And it's not as easy to grasp for a lot of instances. That's kind of what prompted us to build this marketplace of experts where people could, you could have some third party saying, hey, this is why this is so necessary, this is why health is so important for healthcare, how it's changing from fee to service, fee for performance. But, so to summarize, I think the biggest challenge we've seen is startups having a very difficult time conveying succinctly and with passion and accuracy what their value proposition is to somebody who may not be a sophisticated health investor, and helping them bridge that gap so that they can convince even the dumbest of money of what they're doing in the health space.
So I guess I could talk similar to from the perspective of Matt. We kind of had a built-in infrastructure for opportunities, starting as a consulting company in 2006. And the founders consulting for many years prior to that for a large company here in Salt Lake. We had tons of built-in clients, and our story came from a bunch of young guys who decided that there had to be common problems in healthcare that data could solve. So we figured out the data issue in healthcare. And the data issue was that we had IT and we had executives and they didn't speak the same language. And we figured out how to speak the language of IT, what we already knew how to speak the language of executive, and we bridged that gap. To do that, we had to use technology. And so when the technology came along, we literally started just in Excel and with PDF files and text files and Microsoft Access, and have since advanced way beyond there. To harness the power of the large data sets. And now we are able to tap into that same client base. We started building those tools for ourselves to just make our consulting business more scalable and more efficient and to deliver higher value to our customers. We had experiences where we walked right into the boardrooms of these hospitals and gave them answers that they've been asking their IT departments for years, and we had gathered their data 3 weeks ago. And they fell out of their chairs saying, how did you do that? And before long, they were asking for the same solutions that we built for ourselves to use in their own hospitals. And that's how our product was started. And so we literally just started selling it right back to our current consulting customers. And now a majority of our consulting clients have the solution. And we're now, over the last year, adding customers that are just product customers, which is really new to us. And so it's a whole different idea and game that we're playing now on this product side, where you don't interface a client when you talk about an enterprise data solution that can cross their entire financial continuum the same way you do when you're talking about a consulting project. And so that's something we're going through now, learning how to do that in a scalable way. But we have a built-in client base, which was really great to tap into.
I started, let me speak first to my day job, that's still my day job. A physician gets a new medical device or wants to do a new procedure, a new diagnostic test for some disease. They use that on one of our members, and then the bill comes to us, and someone at the company looks at the bill and says, what is this thing? I've never heard of this. And that then goes to the medical director. The medical director walks down the hall to me and says, Nick, you figure this out. You go do the research on it, spend about 6 weeks to figure this one out, along with typically 4 or 5 other technologies that I'm reviewing. And then at the end of that, I have a big report, sometimes 20 pages, sometimes 80 pages, that says, here's what ALS is, Lou Gehrig's disease. Here's how it's currently diagnosed. Here's what this new diagnostic test from Genomic Health is presenting. Here's how much it costs, and here's why we probably should not pay for it. And then we take that to a committee. The committee votes on it, and then it's yes or no. Then we write a medical policy that says we do not believe that there's no evidence that this improves patient outcomes. It's currently investigational or not medically necessary or whatever it is. Then we set up in the system under all those CPT codes or HCPCS codes, we're not paying for them, so they're typed as not covered. So when a diagnosis, an ICD-9 code for Lou Gehrig's comes in with this CPT code, it gets kicked out to not pay. And again, I made that up. I don't know what Genomic Health has. They do. I'm sure it's a fine product. But after doing this, like I said, for about 6 months, and I don't know, that was probably 15, 20 technologies into this. Medtronic, Boston Scientific, St. Jude, Genomic Health, startup companies, all these different products that I had reviewed, and said, I mean, I think at that point it was about 50-50. Half of them that we covered, half of them that we didn't cover. And I would go to the company's website and click on their board of directors and management team link, and that's all these, Mass General, Harvard, MIT, I mean, just incredible people. And I'm going, we got one retrospective analysis on 10 patients, and you're twice the cost of the current standard, and I mean, I can't believe that you guys didn't reach out and talk to me before you went and did exactly what you did. Then I thought, well, why don't I just go start consulting on this? And running around to companies and saying, whether you understand reimbursement or not, and I'll tell everyone here the same thing, reimbursement's a nightmare. I mean, trying to understand, if the product's used in the physician's office, it's going to get paid, but if it's used in the clinic, it's not going to get paid, and if it's inpatient or out, I don't expect anyone to understand that. But I do expect everyone to have a firm understanding of health economics. And when I first started doing consulting, it was very reimbursement centric. And let's think about the codes you're going to use and the price point and those things. And now I've kind of backed that it's just too complicated, and there's firms that can do it better than I can. We need to talk health economics. And whether you're a digital health company or you are a good old-fashioned medical device that's going to be sold to a hospital, everyone in life sciences should have a very firm grasp of health economics. The standard of care is 10% effective. My technology is 12% effective. I'm going to charge 2% more, and here's why. So it's 2% better for 2% more money. And is that right? Or could you get away charging 4% more? Or should you only charge 8%? It goes on and on and on. So really thinking through health economic arguments is where I've moved. I started doing consulting and reimbursement, and I've kind of transitioned to health economics. But at the end of the day, it's the same argument. I don't care what CPT code you have. If your health economic case is garbage, you're not going to get reimbursed. You can have all the codes in the world. So that's kind of how I went from just seeing this as a problem day to day at work to now going, I'm going to go help these companies because they have incredible technologies, but I'm going to deny it. Right? That's a paradox. You have a remarkable medical product, ain't no one going to pay for it. So that's kind of how I've transitioned over these last couple of years from where I started and what I do now. So, anyone else have any?
Going off of what Nick said, we have a lot of startups that have come to us, and that reimbursement issue isn't worked out. They think, hey, we're doing this thing. It's different than what currently exists, but it's not less expensive or it's not more efficacious. And so we think, well, who's going to buy this from you ultimately? And so Nick's been huge help with us talking to companies and showing that. And that kind of speaks to a broader issue of something that we really harp on at Health Funder is investment readiness level. Are people familiar with Steve Blank and his investment readiness level criteria? He invited some people in the life sciences space, and he made some sector-specific, category-specific investment readiness level criteria. So investment readiness level criteria for a medical device company, investment readiness level for a digital health company. Go read through his blog post, and he speaks generally about how the vetting and the understanding of early stage companies can be a much more objective process than it is currently. It's very much lunch meetings and I got a good feeling about that entrepreneur, I pretty well understand what they're doing. There can be a lot more objectivity brought to bear in this industry, and things like understanding reimbursement for health startups is essential. So,
I think people that are out looking for funding or in that idea, that concept, we were talking to somebody just yesterday, our president was talking to someone that just raised a round, and they said, our CEO spent the first year and a half pitching about 1,000 times. And his president's question was, gosh, doesn't VC get tired of hearing from you? And does that turn them off? And he said, that's just kind of how it works. And VC is looking for that next $1 billion valuation they can bet on, and they don't want to burn their bridges as much as you do. And we can speak from the side of the scrutiny that it provides a startup. You put yourself out there and under the critical eye of VC and other potential partners and strategic players, and it really makes you think hard about what you're trying to do. How passionate are you? How clear is your message? What do you want to do beyond next year? What is your vision? How do you get there? I deal with it from the operational side. That's my role in our business, and so I'm always planning ahead and thinking as far out as possible. But we've just been going through a big cultural conversation at our business, and what is our strategy? And we've got since 2006, we've got this far without even having a mission statement. And now we're trying to go to 100 million in revenue and be in 1,000 hospitals, and we realize, wow, that stuff really can make a difference and matter, because when you try to hire the right talent and you try to bring in people that want to get on something that could be really big, they really want to know where you're going. And if you can't tell them, they're likely not going to work for you just because they like you. They've got to really buy into what you're doing, and if they're going to put in the long hours and be invested in what you're doing like you are, that's what you need to be able to make it.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment just on some of the startups that we work with, and hearing the stories of Orca and Equation. They obviously found pretty early on a good product market fit, and they had that market tractions. But one of the things that's really hard as a startup in healthcare is to manage that ability to scale quickly, because you can very easily mess up very early with a customer, and that's your one opportunity to really establish. Early on, you don't want any of those early customer relationships to fail. So even though you may have this demand coming from South Africa, or all of a sudden you have all this inbound, but you have to very strategically choose those customers and manage them the right way, because you can very easily mess up a growing enterprise. So, but anyways, that's I think kind of some commentary here from the panel on the topic. We'd love to get some questions and then answer those if there's anyone out there that has any questions, or feedback from one person. Now, does anyone have a question or have any questions for us? Yeah.
So I work with a startup company in Salt Lake where we develop ophthalmic pharmaceutical products. So along the lines of what you guys were saying, what we should be prepared for, and regarding the insurance, like I can go to the FDA, they can tell me what I need to do for a trial, and I will get a clear idea of what indication I would receive if I successfully meet my primary endpoints and whatever. I can talk to physicians and define an intent to prescribe of a potential product that we can develop. I can talk to end users, they would like to use this product. But you can't go just talk to an insurance company, because they won't talk to you. They don't. It's just like a black hole. Yeah. So you say these people aren't. They get so far and they don't know. I've talked to you about this before several times, but they get so far, and I see us doing the same thing. We keep making all this progress technically within clinical trials and such, and this insurance thing is always looming over us. And we've had a consultant, they say, okay, this is what you should do. We've seen other people, this is what they're trying to do. But to have a locked down strategy to achieve that, code or whatever your endpoint there is extremely difficult. So if any one of you could speak to what to do there, that would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks. For any of you investors, get to know Mike and this company, Ibina. It's great. And that's, I think, Mike, you just nailed why I started consulting. It is a black box, and it's in many respects on purpose a black box with closed doors saying, give me your evidence of clinical utility and nothing more. We'll discuss price and all of that later, which doesn't do much for you because you need to know, can I charge $10,000 an injection or $11,000 or $1,100? But that's where I think, again, good old-fashioned health economics comes in. How much currently does it cost to treat macular degeneration over a course of therapy, an episode of care over 12 months or whatever? Okay, that's the benchmark. At what improvement? So, 6% improvement and decrease and whatever. Well, can we beat that metric? And if we can, by how much? And then assign a dollar amount to that. And that's where things in health economics like an ICER, an incremental cost effectiveness ratio, or QALY. We don't really use QALYs in the United States much, but understanding some of those types of things. And what most people are asking for, though, when they want to network with an insurance company is a consulting type thing. Will you walk me through so that at the end of all of this, I've given you exactly what you're asking for? And I know what our team would say. They'd say, we're not a consultancy. Our job is to review medical claims and then determine whether or not we're going to pay. So, but what if you're giving me a product that saves me $5 million a year in all of our macular degeneration patients? Wouldn't I want to network with you? So that's where I step away from saying, okay, I don't work for Intermountain, I work for NC Anderson Consulting, and yeah, the insurance company should want to talk to you if you can present them a health economic claim that you're going to save them $5 million a year in this one particular disease state. But they look at it and go, yeah, but our job's not to build your company. You go build something with great analytical validity, and clinical utility, a strong health economic outcome, and don't charge us too much more whatever than we're currently paying, and you should be good to go. So I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth to prove a point that a health insurance company's job is not to build your company. On the other hand, we should want to network with you and have some meet and greet, meeting of the minds to say, all right, if you think you guys can save us this much money, here's what we would like to see. To heck with what the FDA says. I mean, you know me. I'm the world's fiercest critic of the Food and Drug Administration. As soon as I'm elected Pharaoh, we're abolishing them. And I'd have to be Pharaoh because the president's not enough. I'd have to be half God. That just get rid of them. Because what they say it can be marketed isn't enough. It's never enough. That if the FDA says you have to do 100 patients over 12 months, just do 200 patients over 24 months. It's never enough. Whatever the FDA says, it is never enough to meet the hurdle for reimbursement. In drugs, it might be a little different than in devices, but you're kind of a hybrid of the two. But whatever the FDA says, add 10 or 20 or 50 or 100% to that, and that should probably be good enough for reimbursement.
So anyone else, another question?
So we're with Platinum Dental. We buy failing dental practices and turn them around. We've got up to where we have 9 practices here in Utah, and we're starting to approach insurance companies about payer reimbursement. What's the best approach to these insurance companies to basically get them to want to raise our reimbursement? Some of the insurance companies, it's taking a simple phone call saying, hey, we'd like a higher reimbursement. We have this many providers in your network, and they just raise it. Others are a little bit more difficult. What would make them more inclined to raise their reimbursements for us?
Yeah. That's another payer question.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. We just dealt with this with a different product that Intermountain. So we're part of Intermountain. I shouldn't say we, because I'm not representing Select Health here tonight. Select Health is part of Intermountain Healthcare. And Intermountain Healthcare called Select Health, called me and said, hey, we know we're only getting reimbursed this much, but will you guys work with us and raise the amount you're reimbursing? And it was actually for nipple tattooing. So we have to pay for breast reconstruction after a mastectomy, and after which the women will want, and some men have breast cancer too, will have the nipple, the areola tattooed back on, and we have to pay for that.
We'll have that discussion offline about things that we consider medically necessary and some that we don't. And this one we have to pay for. We're forced to. The government makes us pay for these. Sometimes I can't help myself. Yeah, with this one, Intermountain called us and said, can you guys raise our reimbursement amount? And then at that point we say, why? Why? I mean, and then it's bare knuckle boxing that you could say, well, then we won't treat any of your members. And you'd have to prove why you're worth that much more. You know, if it costs X to do a root canal, why are you asking for this much more now? And maybe present a case and say, well, all of our materials are going up. It's more expensive to do a root canal now than it was in 2005 when we first negotiated this contract with you. And show them, look guys, our margins were only X that many years ago. It's now this big. If we don't get reimbursed more, we're gonna go out of business, and we treat 2,500 of your members and we wanna keep treating them. We think we give a good value. Providers, in this case, you're acting as a provider. Providers work for the health insurance company. They don't work for the hospital. I don't care what their name tag says. Your cardiologist works for Aetna and Cigna and Blue Cross. That's who pays their bills. So when that cardiologist or dentist is asking for more money, they have to present a case to their boss, to the health insurance company, why they warrant that much more money, in my humble opinion. So I think you could do a good data analysis, pull all your claims for all of the members of X, Y, and Z health insurance companies, and then show how your cost of goods sold has gone up and why you warrant a 2 or 3 or 4% increase in reimbursement, or 20%, whatever you're looking for. I'd just do a good analysis and present that to the payers.
Thanks. So maybe one or two more questions. If not, one more time.
All right, good general question here. So, healthcare there's so many problems. You guys are kind of looking at your own individual ones. So if you weren't doing what you were doing, what else, like what other problems would you be solving in healthcare?
Good question. Are you one of the entrepreneurs?
You know, we're in a pretty good spot right now. And I think the other problem that we'll probably get into is probably based around provider patient communications, right? Whether that's text messaging, HIPAA compliant text messaging, and evolving that into teleconferencing, and evolving that into some sort of augmented reality, virtual reality, where an individual really doesn't have to go to a provider's location, whether that be a clinic, hospital, doctor's office, dentist's office, or anything. I think that's going to be very, very interesting over the next 5 years.
Do you guys know who Ray Kurzweil is, the futurist? I would probably do like human genomics, or I really like patient empowerment, or the ability to do at-home diagnostics. If you think about it, you probably all have your thermometer and maybe a scale. But outside of that, you really don't have a whole lot of things to track your health as a human being. And that's changing drastically. And one of the areas, I brought up Ray Kurzweil because he's big on genomics changing the lifespan of human beings. It will essentially reach immortality. He thinks within his lifetime, because in maybe 30 years, we'll be able to have the technology for people to live to 120 years. But then because those people can live to 120 years, 20 years after that, they'll learn how to live to 180, and it'll get to the point where we can continue to live. Who knows if that'll really happen, but the genomics aspect of that and tweaking and changing it is fascinating. So doing something in that space where people can understand their own genome and kind of manage their care through that is fascinating personally. And just the whole story of mapping the human genome is a great exercise of the rate at which humans' knowledge is accelerating exponentially. When they started the Human Genome Project, people were saying that's going to take hundreds of years at the pace that you're going. And Ray and others said no, because we gain our knowledge exponentially, so we'll do it in about 10 years. And then they did it about, I think it was 10 years, don't quote me, it wasn't 10, maybe 10 to 15. But anyway, that's Human Genome.
Does anyone else another question?
So we're with Platinum Dental. We buy failing dental practices and turn them around. We've got up to where we have 9 practices here in Utah, and we're starting to approach insurance companies about payer reimbursement. What's the best approach to these insurance companies to basically get them to want to raise our reimbursement? Some of the insurance companies, it's taking a simple phone call saying, hey, we'd like a higher reimbursement, we have this many providers in your network, and they just raise it. Others are a little bit more difficult. What would make them more inclined to raise the reimbursements for us?
Yeah, that's another bigger question.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. We just dealt with this with a different project with Intermountain. So we're part of Intermountain. I shouldn't say we, because I'm not representing Select Health. Select Health is part of Intermountain Healthcare. And Intermountain Healthcare called Select Health, called me and said, hey, we know we're only getting reimbursed this much, but you know, will you guys work with us and raise the amount we're reimbursing? And it was actually for nipple tattooing. So we have to pay for breast reconstruction after a mastectomy, and after which women will want, and some men have breast cancer too, will have the nipple, the areola tattooed back on, and we have to pay for that. We'll have that discussion offline about things that we consider medically necessary and some that we don't, and this one we have to pay for. We're forced to. The government makes us pay for these. Sometimes I can't help myself. But yeah, with this one, Intermountain called us and said, can you guys raise our reimbursement amount? And then at that point we say, why? Why? I mean, and then it's bare knuckle boxing. That you can say, well, then we won't treat any of your members. And you'd have to prove why you're worth that much more. You know, if it costs X to do a root canal, why are you asking for this much more now? And maybe present a case and say, well, all of our materials are going up. It's more expensive to do a root canal now than it was in 2005 when we first negotiated this contract with you. And show them, look guys, our margins were only X that many years ago. It's now this big. If we don't get reimbursed more, we're going to go out of business. And we treat 2,500 of your members, and we want to keep treating them. We think we give a good value. Providers, in this case, you're acting as a provider. Providers work for the health insurance company. They don't work for the hospital. I don't care what their name tag says. Your cardiologist works for Aetna and Cigna and Blue Cross. That's who pays their bills. So when that cardiologist or dentist is asking for more money, they have to present a case to their boss, to the health insurance company, why they warrant that much more money, in my own opinion. So I think you could do a good data analysis, pull all your claims for all of the members of X, Y, and Z health insurance companies, and then show how your cost of goods sold has gone up and why you warrant a 2 or 3 or 4% increase in reimbursement, or 20%, whatever you're doing. I'd just do a good analysis and present that to the payers.
Thanks. So maybe 1 or 2 more questions. If not, one more time.
All right, good general question here. So healthcare there's so many problems. You guys are kind of looking at your own individual ones. So if you weren't doing what you were doing, what else, like what other problems would you be solving in healthcare?
Good question. Are you one of the entrepreneurs?
You know, we're in a pretty good spot right now. And I think the other problem that we'll probably get into is probably based around provider, patient communications, right? Whether that's text messaging, HIPAA-compliant text messaging, and evolving that to teleconferencing, and then evolving that into some sort of augmented reality, virtual reality, where an individual really doesn't have to go to a provider's location, whether that be a clinic, hospital, doctor's office, dentist's office, or anything. I think that's going to be very, very interesting over the next 5 years.
Do you guys know who Ray Kurzweil is, the futurist? I would probably do like human genomics, or I really like patient empowerment, or the ability to do at-home diagnostics. If you think about it, you probably all have your thermometer and maybe a scale, but outside of that, you really don't have a whole lot of things to track your health as a human being, and that's changing drastically. And one of the areas I brought up Ray Kurzweil because he's big on on genomics changing the lifespan of human beings. It will essentially reach immortality. He thinks within his lifetime, because in maybe 30 years, we'll be able to have the technology for people to live to 120 years. But then because those people can live to 120 years, 20 years after that, they'll learn how to live to 180, and it'll get to the point where we can continue to live. Who knows if that'll really happen, but the genomics aspect of that and tweaking and changing our DNA is fascinating. So doing something in that space where people can understand their own genome and kind of manage their care through that is fascinating personally. And just the whole story of mapping the human genome is a great exercise of the rate at which humans' knowledge is accelerating exponentially. When they started the Human Genome Project, people were saying that's going to take hundreds of years at the pace that you're going. And Ray and others said no, because we gain our knowledge exponentially, so we'll do it in about 10 years. And then they did it about, I think it was 10 years, don't quote me if it wasn't 10, maybe 10 or 15, but anyway, outside Human Genome.
But a 4-year-old doing more work right there than we could have ever done 50 years ago. Well, that's this. I mean, this is going to be your diagnostician in the future, if I know my way about it. That we'll just take the diagnosticians and displace them, and we'll only go see interventionists. When this says you need a stent, then you'll go have the interventionists put one in you. But then that's where, to Jared's point, hopefully this will be able to diagnose you so early you won't even need the stent. You'll change something in your behavior that prevents you from needing the stent.
Very cool. Good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think we'll end it here. And I just, again, want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank Church and State, Beehive Startups, UVEF. If you'd like to know any more about HealthBox and us running our second program here in Salt Lake City, I'm here to speak with you, as well as my colleague Polly in the back there. So find us. We'd love to hear about your company and how we can help you join our accelerator. So thank you very much to everyone. Let's give a round of applause for the panel.